Okay, the belief I'm working on today is Joseph Smith lied about seeing God. So the situation is I am sitting on my bed and I'm reading the LDS Gospel Topics essay about the first vision. And I find all of the accounts of the first vision, like not the ones that are on the LDS website. Well, they're still put out by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in the Joseph Smith papers. But I have to do a lot of digging to get to the original accounts of the first vision. So I have to do a lot of digging to get to the point where I can see the full accounts. And there's several different ones. And Joseph Smith, according to the LDS Church, penned his own versions of the first vision, and there were at least 3 that he wrote, possibly 4, and then there were others that were written down by other people who claimed to have heard it from him. So this is the situation. I'm in this situation where I'm seeing that these versions, even the ones that were supposedly written by Joseph himself, differ from each other a lot. So that's the situation. All right. So as the facilitator, I would say Joseph Smith lied about seeing God. Is it true? As a client, I'm closing my eyes and I'm going back to that situation where I'm sitting on the bed and I'm reading these different accounts. Yes, Joseph Smith lied about seeing God. So, facilitator asks, Joseph Smith lied about seeing God. Can you absolutely know it's true? So, I, as the client, close my eyes, and can I absolutely know it's true that Joseph Smith lied about seeing God? No, I can't know. I wasn't there. So then the third question is, how do you react? What happens when you believe the thought that Joseph Smith lied about seeing God? So again, I, as the client, I close my eyes. I go back to that situation where I'm sitting on the bed and I'm reading these different accounts that are very different from each other. I'm so angry. I feel betrayed. I feel like I've been lied to my entire life. I think about the account of the first vision that I've been told my whole life. The account where Joseph sees 2 separate beings, one being God the Father, the other being Jesus Christ. He sees them not as some just ball of light, but he describes them as 2 human beings standing above him in the air and speaking to him. So that's the version that I grew up with. And so I'm thinking about that version, and then I'm looking at these others. One that says he didn't see anyone at all, one that says he saw one being, and I am just so angry that these accounts are so different. And then I noticed the date on the accounts, and I realized that the first time Joseph wrote about his first vision was 12 years after it happened. And so I'm thinking, how could he even remember something for 12 years? No, I'm thinking if I had had an experience where I actually saw God, I would absolutely remember that, and I would go straight home and write it down. So I'm thinking all of these things about him. I am just so angry at him. I am so angry at all of the people who published the church materials. I'm angry at the people who made the film that's at the Church Visitors Center or the Church History Museum in Salt Lake City. And I'm remembering the past where I went to see this film. And I remember hearing in the film that there were several different versions of the first vision, but that they all told the same story. So I'm remembering this film and I'm comparing it against these accounts of the first vision that I am reading from the Joseph Smith papers online on my phone. And I'm noticing a huge discrepancy between the two. So I am so angry. I am so angry. I am so angry that there are so many people visiting that church history museum, people from all over the world, people who have never heard of the Mormon Church, of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And they're watching this film and they're trusting that it's telling the truth, like I trusted that it was telling the truth. And I'm so angry that so many people are being misled and lied to. I feel responsible for all of them. I feel responsible for telling them all the truth because the church isn't telling them the truth. And the people who are in the church are not telling the truth. The prophets and the apostles and the bishops and the stake presidents and the area presidents, the mission presidents, the area 70s, the primary teachers, none of them are telling the truth. I feel angry at all of these people, the bishops, the stake presidents, the primary teachers, my parents, so many people who lied to me, so many people who told me this lie. And I think of my dad, who was a seminary teacher, and I get angry at him because he had to have known that there were all these different accounts of the first vision. He had to have known, and he never told me. He never told me that there was a huge discrepancy between these different accounts. He never told me that the first one was written down 12 years after this first vision supposedly happened. And I'm thinking about all of the times that I was told and heard in general conference and read from prophets, Mormon prophets, that the truth of the entire church hinges on whether Joseph saw God the Father and Jesus Christ. And so I thought, well, if the entire church hinges on this and it's a lie, then the entire church is a lie. And I've been lied to my entire life. I feel used. I feel abused. I feel taken advantage of. I feel gullible. I feel like I was so stupid for believing this for so many years, and I'm angry that I based my life decisions on the teachings of this church. And I start thinking of all the money that we've given to the church. I think of all the time that we've given to the church, serving in different volunteer positions in the church. They call them callings. I think of all of this, and I think of all the things I taught my children, and I see it as damaging to them. So I've damaged my children because I believed these lies about Joseph Smith. And I damaged myself. I beat myself up when I was a full, active, believing member of the church because I had a really hard time believing that this boy Joseph Smith was someone that God talked to. I really, really gave myself a hard time about this because people that I looked up to, people that I admired in the church, spoke very highly of Joseph Smith. They swore that they knew that he was a prophet of God. They swore that they knew that God had spoken directly to him and instructed him to form this church and to write the Book of Mormon, to translate the Book of Mormon. And I feel betrayed. Like I trusted these people. I looked up to these people. And then I start thinking, who can I look up to now? These people I trusted, these people I looked up to, they spread the lies, or they believed the lies because the lies were so good. And then they spread them to me. And I start thinking, why, if I'm this stupid, I'm thinking, if I'm this stupid and I discovered that all of this is a bunch of crap, why didn't my parents discover this? And if they did discover it, why didn't they tell me about it? And I'm frustrated that they're dead now and I can't even ask them. I start thinking, I have to leave this church now. And what am I going to do? This church has been my whole life. It has been my neighbors, my friends, my siblings, my husband, my marriage, my children. This church has ruled my life. I've allowed this church to rule my life. And I'm angry at myself for not giving myself enough credit when I started feeling like something was wrong with the church. When I started noticing that things that I was hearing in church felt off, they felt wrong. And I start getting angry at myself for blaming myself, for telling myself I was wrong when I felt like something was off. When I believe the thought that Joseph Smith lied about seeing God, I start thinking about all of the other prophets that came after him, and I think they had to have known that he was lying. And so I see every one of them as liars. When I say prophet, that's what they call themselves in the Mormon church. So I see them as having lied. I start to view all the people who were in our ward as people that I need to feel sorry for, people I need to watch out for, look out for, look after, protect. Because I love these people and I want to protect them from the lies. And then I feel defeated because I know that it would do me no good to tell them they've been lied to. The lies are so good and so devious and so manipulative that they wouldn't believe me if I told them they'd been lied to. And then I get angry at myself for believing that. I start thinking, you can't get in their heads, you have no idea. Maybe there are people who are going to church and they're doubting, and it would be nice if someone reached out to them and said, look, these are lies, and then they could wake up and say, yeah, you're right. I'm glad I'm not the only one who thinks that. I think of my nieces and nephews. Oh gosh. My heart hurts. My heart hurts so badly for these nieces and nephews of mine who are growing up with these beliefs and going out and being missionaries when they're 18 and 19 years old and spreading these beliefs. Spreading these beliefs that Joseph Smith saw God, spreading these beliefs that the Mormon church is the only true church on earth, spreading these beliefs that the only way to get to the highest heaven is to be married, and to be married in the Mormon temple, and to pay your tithing. And Oh, it hurts so badly to think of them and to think of the pain that they must be experiencing. The pain that I experienced, and I imagine that they must be experiencing the same pain. The pain of feeling like you're not being listened to, the pain of feeling like you're not being heard, the pain of feeling like you have to stop your emotions at every turn. You have to stop your thoughts at every turn. My heart hurts for my children. I feel incredible guilt and regret that I taught them that Joseph Smith saw God. I taught them that the Book of Mormon is a real, true book, and that the stories in it literally happened. I feel guilt and shame that I taught my little 5-year-old daughter that all of the Bible stories and the Book of Mormon stories that we have heard happened to real people, and that the miracles in them really happened. And I feel terrible guilt and shame over dragging my kids out of bed, not literally, but bothering them until they got out of bed and came upstairs to do the Mormon family scripture study and the Mormon family prayer. And I'm picturing their faces. The looks on their faces of, oh, Mom, I'm so bored. This is so, I don't want to be here. And me telling them that the prophet has commanded us to have these scripture studies and these prayers, and so that we could have the blessings of heaven and be protected from the evils of Satan. And I remember teaching my children these things, and I feel like I gave up years of opportunities to be close to them, opportunities to teach them things that would allow them to grow up with confidence and peace. I feel like I robbed my children of that because I taught them the church things and the church way of life and the Mormon church guilt and the Mormon church shame, and I don't know how to unteach that to them now. I'm also sitting on my bed thinking this church isn't true, and I don't know how to tell my children. I don't know if it's going to devastate them. I don't know if they're going to lose all their friends. And if I'm going to lose all my friends, and I'm already worried about my children because I've grown up in fear. I've grown up in fear of the world, as the church calls it. I've grown up in fear of the influences of the world. And I've instilled that fear in my children. I've taught them that fear. I don't know whether they've believed that fear, but that's what I've taught them. And I'm so scared. I'm so scared. I'm thinking, what now? What happens now? What are we going to do? I've had this what I thought was my lifeline, like the church. I thought it was my only source of safety. And now I can't even trust that, and I'm so scared. Funny enough, I'm also feeling a sense of redemption and vindication, that oh, I'm not crazy. I knew something was wrong. I was right. So I'm feeling that too when I believe that Joseph Smith lied about seeing God. Yeah, when I believe that Joseph Smith lied about seeing God, I do feel some relief. I feel some relief. Like, oh, I don't have to believe this anymore. And I'm so scared to tell my children because I have no idea where their belief lies, where their belief in the church lies. I have no idea whether they believe it. And I'm thinking that this church was the whole life of my kids. I'm thinking we live in Utah in a very Mormon community. We've lived there for many, many years, and that's our neighbors, that's our friends. What am I going to do? How do I treat other people when I believe the thought Joseph Smith lied about seeing God? I'm thinking of my old primary teacher from clear back when I was a little girl, showing us this slideshow film of the first vision of Joseph Smith, and I'm seeing the photograph of him kneeling in the forest in this grove of trees, looking up at two men dressed in white who are standing above the ground, like floating above the ground. And God is telling him, "This is my beloved son, hear him." And then they supposedly tell Joseph that none of the churches on the earth at the time are correct, and that he is the one to start a new church. I'm disappointed in my primary teacher for not doing the research that I'm doing now. And then I'm angry at myself for being disappointed in my primary teacher. And I tell myself they didn't have the internet back then. They didn't have the gospel topics essays back then. They didn't have the resources that I have just in my hand. So I start to excuse them, but I'm still angry. I'm still thinking there were books. And I'm angry at the prophets and at my parents for calling the books that tell the truth about the church anti-Mormon literature. And I start to get angry at that term, anti-Mormon literature, because I grew up with this term. And it was a a term that was associated with danger. And again, I think, how could I have been so stupid and so gullible as to believe it was dangerous to get information about the church from its primary sources? Let's see. Another sub-question that a facilitator could ask in this question 3 is, what does it cost you to believe the thought? So what does it cost me to believe the thought? What does it, if I'm this facilitator, I'm saying, what does it cost you to believe the thought that Joseph Smith lied about seeing God? So I'm going to go back to sitting on my bed and seeing these essays. What does it cost me? It costs me my peace because I'm angry. It costs me feeling any love or compassion for Joseph Smith because I'm angry and I feel hurt and betrayed by him. It costs me feeling any kind of love or compassion for any of these church leaders, church teachers, my parents, anyone who taught me about this story of the first vision of Joseph Smith. It costs me love for them because I'm angry with all of them, and at the very least I'm disappointed in them. So it costs me those feelings of peace, of love, of joy, of understanding, of compassion. It costs me all that. All that goes out the window, all of it. I don't feel compassion. I don't feel love. And I don't feel love from them. I start imagining disappointment coming from them toward me. I start imagining my siblings being disappointed in me. I start imagining them berating me and saying, Adrian, you knew all this was true. You stood up and bore your testimony multiple times that this was true. You taught your children that this church was true. You talked to me about how true this is. You wrote emails, you wrote letters, you wrote messages about this, how this is true. And so I'm imagining them just berating me and saying, you're crazy, you're a crackpot, or you're trying to sin, you're trying to justify yourself. And then I start questioning myself. I start questioning myself and going, maybe I am wrong. Maybe I'm seeing things wrong. Maybe I'm misjudging Joseph Smith. Maybe I'm misjudging the prophets. I start doubting myself and questioning myself. So what does it cost me? It costs me confidence in my own judgment. It costs me confidence in my own ability to discern truth from falsehood. Yeah, it cost me that because I'm thinking, I believed these lies my whole life. I felt the truth of at least that this was the right church. And I figured, well, if this is the right church and this is the true church and the only true church on earth, then that has to mean that Joseph Smith saw God and that God told him to start this church. I believed all that. And so I'm starting to doubt my ability to recognize truth. So I'm like, oh my gosh, if I believed this for 43 years and I based all my life decisions on this, I must be crazy. I must have, no ability to discern truth from error, truth from lies. Wow, yeah. Oh my gosh. Holy fraggle. Whoa. So, okay. What else does it cost me? It costs me feeling strong. I feel so weak. oh gosh. And I start thinking in my head, Adrian, what's the matter with you? You're looking for excuses to leave this church. You are so weak. Your faith is so weak. Yeah, I am thinking that. Even though I feel relieved that I've discovered that I've been lied to my whole life, I'm also thinking, you're just using this as an excuse because you're lazy and you don't want to do all the work that the church requires. Yeah, I'm telling myself this. How does it benefit me? That's another sub-question. How does it benefit me to believe the thought? How does it benefit me to believe the thought that Joseph Smith lied about seeing God? Okay. Well, like I said before, I feel this redemption, like, oh, I was right. I was right. This church is a bunch of bunk. I mean, I don't remember actually thinking that the whole church was a bunch of bunk, but I remember thinking that there was something off. There was something off about it. So I feel some redemption, like, oh, okay, I was right about something. How else does it benefit me? It takes me off the hook for trying to believe that Joseph is a prophet of God. So I feel some relief. How does it benefit me to believe the thought that Joseph Smith lied about seeing God? Makes me feel justified for any times that I lied. So like, if this guy lied and started a whole church and allowed all these people to pay hundreds of thousands of their own money to this church, sure, I'm justified in telling a little white lie, like telling someone they look beautiful when I don't think they do, or telling someone that they did a good job on something when secretly I'm thinking that it was terrible or whatever. I'm thinking, yeah, I'm not such a bad person compared to him. How does it benefit me to believe that Joseph Smith lied about seeing God? I see it as another reason to leave Utah. I've been wanting to move out of Utah because I'm a gypsy at heart. Yeah. I see it as another thing to put on the list of reasons to give to my husband why we should leave, why we should move. Why we should sell our house and move to a different neighborhood at least. How does it benefit me to believe that thought? I don't have to feel inferior anymore. I don't have to feel weak anymore. I don't have to feel like a lazy person anymore, because it gives me some redemption knowing, oh, I was being lied to. I don't have to keep giving my time and my money and my talents to this church. Another one is what obsessions and addictions come out. But let me go back to how does it benefit me. Let me see if there's anything more there. How does it benefit me to believe that Joseph Smith lied about seeing God? Well, it makes it really easy to wrap up all of the words of the previous prophets, wrap it up in a package and chuck it out the window of my mind and just go, I don't have to believe anything that they said. Because all of the things they said were based on lies. So another sub-question is, what obsessions and addictions come out when you believe the thought? So what obsessions and addictions come out when I believe the thought that Joseph Smith lied about seeing God? I actually feel better. I'm not thinking of any obsessions or addictions. Let me think. There's got to be something. Okay, there is one. And I know that this one did come up because, I mean, I dove into researching as much as I could. So I became obsessed with reading everything I possibly could from the church's website. And I was obsessed with sticking with church materials because I didn't want anyone to accuse me of reading anti-Mormon literature and then leaving the church because I read anti-Mormon literature. Yes, I was very obsessed with what people would think of me, what the Mormons would think of me, my Mormon family members, Mormon neighbors, Mormon friends. I was very obsessed with what people would think of me. So I wanted to prove to them that I could learn through only church resources that the church wasn't true. That was really important to me. So I became very obsessed with that. I refused to look at anything non-church early on there. And I spent probably weeks just focusing on the church materials and the church websites. I don't remember how long. I'd have to look back at my journals. But so yeah, major obsession with what people would think of me. Major obsession with that. Major obsession. I didn't want anybody to know that I was researching this stuff. I didn't want any of my Mormon people, which was almost all the people that I knew, I didn't want any of them to know that I was researching. Like, I felt like a criminal. Like, I was obsessed with like being incognito and being undercover, researching all this stuff. And we stopped going to church, and I was really scared about that. I was really obsessed with my fear of people knocking on our door and telling us that they're worried about us, telling us that they love us. And like every time the doorbell rang or someone knocked on the door, I got so scared. Because I was like, I'm not ready yet. Like, I don't even know what to tell these people. I haven't finished my research yet. I'm not ready to talk to them. I'm not ready to tell them what I believe. Yeah, I was also obsessed with this. I have to come to what I believe. Like, I have to figure out what I believe. I have to get to that point. I have to be ready.